So I am currently recording the Zoom session for today for your classmates, for those who were not able to join us this afternoon kasi biglang tsumaka na naman yung panahon. Lakas nga ng ano dito eh, kiglat. Pasabi na lang sa kanila that after this Zoom meeting, I'll try my best to upload the Zoom recording right away. Sana lang hindi rin bumagal si Converge. Okay? So as of now, we are 25 on the Zoom meeting. 24, 25, kasi 26 na. For those who are late, please type in your complete name on our chat box. Okay. I hope you were able to print this part of your module kasi it would be easier for you to annotate some important things which will be lectured this afternoon. Okay. Once again, I won't be posting any lecture videos. Thus, I will just post the recording of this Zoom session for those who were not able to join us this afternoon. Okay. So, pwesto na kayo. Ayan. We'll start with the last topic under midterm grading, which is your hypothesis testing. Okay, we'll not do the hypothesis testing this session. We'll just have your introduction. We are going to discuss the important concepts that you need to know for you to better understand the processes on how you'll do your hypothesis testing later on. Okay, so we start with a simple recall. Syempre, so mag-start tayo sa dalawang definitions. We have here your population and of course your sample. Based from your last module, it says there that your population, okay, so your population here would be your set of all observations. Yan. So all elements that comprises your study is your population. Whereas your sample here is just a portion. Yan. Sinabi natin portion, this is just a subset of your population. And based again from the last topic, your population is denoted by your capital letter N, whereas your sample is your small letter n. So if we try to visualize that one, let's say this is your population. If you take out a portion from your population, that is your sample. Okay, I hope those two are clear. Next. We have here your statistical inference. It says there generalizing a sample to a population with calculated degree of certainty. Okay, so recall ulit tayo. Your statistics is divided into two types. Diba? We have your descriptive statistics and of course your inferential statistics. Your inferential statistics is the same as your statistical inference. Wherein you had studied a sample, you generalized something that is applicable to your population. Okay, so that's statistical difference. Coming from a sample, we are going to study it, do some statistical tools, yan. And then later on, we're going to generalize something from the sample towards a population with, of course, a calculated degree of certainty. Yan. What is this degree of certainty? So if you can recall, we have the concept level of confidence before. Yan. Your level of confidence, which is what again? What percentage? It's 95%. Usually with your 5% margin of error. Diba? If you can still recall that. Okay? So, next concepts tayo. I hope you are notating, ha? That's why I mentioned that you are to download. If in case na may printer kayo, would be better na nag-print nyo na ito. Okay? So next concepts tayo, we also have your parameter and your statistic. Okay? So what again is parameter? If your any numerical data that came from a population. So any data that came from a population is called your parameter. Statistic, on the other hand, kabaliktaran lang siya. So any data or any numerical value that came from a sample is your statistic. Okay, examples. We have your population mean. Yan, population mean because your data, the average came from a population. It is denoted by your mu. And on the other hand, we have your sample mean. So if your data came from a sample and you took the average, this is your sample mean, which is denoted by your X bar. Yan. Okay? Mu and then X bar. Dito naman tayo sa second, population proportion. Okay? So for your population proportion, when we say proportion, this is just a fraction of your population. Fraction lang siya. You just took something from your population. That's your population proportion. Okay? Whereas, if your data came from a sample and you took something from that sample, that is called your sample proportion or simply P hat. Dito P. Ito P hat. Kanyang symbol. So our population proportion usually is just ranges from 0 to 1, or in percentage, it is from 0% to 100%. Okay? So please take note of that. Pag population proportion lang, it can be ranging from 0 to 1 or 0% to 1%. Example tayo para mas maintindihan nyo yung population proportion. Let's say we have a certain population. Kunyari, there are certain people that are found in SM. They are 500. Kunyari. There are 500 people in SM and let's say 200. 200 people are wearing white shirt. Okay, so kunyari, there's a certain population size sa SM, may 500 na tao. 200 sa kanila, naka-white shirt. Okay, so how are we going to compute your population proportion? Simply your X all over your capital N. Okay, which is your 200 over 500. So if we try to do that, yan, 0.4, pasok pa naman siya sa 0 to 1, di ba? Or you can also have here 40%. So it only means that 40% out of 500 is wearing white shirt. So isipin ninyo, proportion is a fraction. Fraction, ayan, fraction of your population. Okay? So kailangan nating i-familiarize kung anong kaibahan ng population mean sa population proportion. Kasi later on, we're going to use those concepts. Okay? So now, since you already know the difference between population mean and your proportion, let's try to relate parameter and statistic with respect to your statistical inference. Right? With respect to statistical inference. So, sabi natin, your inferential statistics uses sample to generalize something towards the population. Ba? Therefore, your X bar, your sample mean, will be used. Oy, ang lakas ng kudlat. So your sample mean will be used to estimate your population mean or your mu. Okay? And your P hat or your sample proportion will be used to estimate your population proportion or simply P. So that's the role of our statistical inference. Again, we are to study a certain sample and we generate a conclusion that is applicable to your whole population. So your parameters are mu Okay, your population mean or your average, diba? Mean is just your average. And of course, your population proportion. So a fraction of the population. Huh? So you may take a screenshot before we move on to the next slide. So take a screenshot. I will now clear all of the drawings. All right. So dito na tayo. What is a hypothesis? I know that you guys have an idea ano ba tong hypothesis na to. So for those who were able to experience creating their own hypothesis, that's good. Okay. Usually, this is done during your bio experiments, di ba? If you can still recall, you have your scientific method, ask a question, do a research background, construct hypothesis, experiment, analyze the data, conclude, mga steps ng scientific method. And before nagawa din namin yon. Kahit na matanda na ako, natagawa din namin yon dati sa bio class. We were tasked to compare, no? Compare kung ano kayo magiging effect ng sunlight sa growth ng plants. So plant A, yung muna nga mula. So plant A, we placed it inside the classroom with no proper sunlight. Yung rays lang ng sun coming from the window. And then plant B was left outside the classroom, wherein there was enough sunlight and of course air. Ayan. So we try to I had undergone the scientific method, ask a question, do a research background, and our hypothesis is that, of course, plant B will grow. Yan, will have a significant growth compared to plant A kasi nga nasa labas siya ng classroom. So that's our hypothesis. So trinay namin yung experiment. Nagpagkat kami timula and then we place it inside the classroom. Then the other one is left outside. Hindi naman tag-ulan that time kaya okay lang. Okay? And then we try to record or tally the height as weeks goes by. Okay? And then after computing your data, we come up with a conclusion that plants, usually with proper amount of sunlight and air, will have a significant growth compared to plants that are secluded from the sunlight. So coming from our samples, we came up with a certain conclusion that plants, yan, di ba, population na kami. So that's inferential statistics. So relating it to this, what is hypothesis? So what is hypothesis? Basically, this is an educated guess. Okay. So tignan natin, bakit kaya siya educated guess na sinasabi? Takas ng ulan, ay ng kidlat. Okay, so letter A. If we find the need to siguro not finish the Zoom meeting kung masyadong malakas yung kidlat kasi delikado naman. On my end, nakasaksak kasi yung laptop ko dito sa saksakan at nasa gilid siya ng window ko. Pwede akong makiglatan. So I will tell you I will advise you. For now, let's focus on the lecture. Okay? So sabi ko kanina, this is an educated guess based on this definition. A hypothesis is a supposition or proposed explanation based on limited evidence. Okay? As a starting point for further investigation. Limited evidence. So, ibig sabihin, meron kang starting point. Why did you have that particular guess? It is an educated guess kasi nga it's based from at least there is a limited evidence kung saan ka nanggagaling. Bakit mo na-hypothesize yun? Hindi yan basta-basta na hinulaan mo lang. Meron at meron kang limited evidence. O let's try to relate it on a relationship. Okay? So kunyari, hindi na sweet yung boyfriend mo sa'yo. Dati-dati, naaalala niya yung monthsary niyo, yung anniversary ninyo. Tapos bigla na lang na wala na siyang maalala. Like, kailangan mo ipaalala sa kanya and so on. Nagkaroon ka tuloy ng hypothesis. Siguro meron na siyang iba. Okay? Saan galing yung hypothesis mo? Kahit paano, educated guess pa rin naman siya. Kasi there's a limited evidence na nag-iba na yung pakikitungo niya sa'yo. He's not like that before. But of course, let's have letter B. Okay? Second definition. So you have an idea or explanation. You then test it through study and experimentation. Of course, you will not stop on your hypothesis. Siguro may babae siya. Period. Siyempre, you are going to test it. How? You ask him, probably, may reasons. You do your investigation, quote and unquote. Ikaw bahala. Okay? And it says there another example, experimentation. So let's say your COVAX or your COVID vaccines. So those vaccines were tested, had undergone many clinical trials before they were disposed to the public. Hindi siya basta-basta na, uy, pwede ata to. Try natin. Baka pwede to sa mga matatanda. Hindi siya ganon. That's why they come up with certain efficacy rates for each and every vaccines. Diba merong 95%, Sinovac, Moderna din ata 95. For me, I was vaccinated by I mean my vaccine was Janssen, which is 66% efficacy ata or something. Okay? So there, that is your hypothesis, an educated guess that needs to be tested. Okay? So you may take a screenshot as I clear the drawings. Sabihin nyo ha, pag nawawala na ako, like di nyo na naririnig, kasi baka biglang humina yung internet connection ko eh. It's starting to rain so hard. Okay, so kanina, simply hypothesis. Now, we are going to have it. Yan. Yan natin. What is statistical hypothesis? Dito tayo. Statistical hypothesis is a conjecture or supposition about a population parameter. Naka-highlight yan. This conjecture may, of course, be true or not true. Yan. Maybe true or not true. Kaya yun yung gagawin natin. We are going to test kung tama ba yun or mali ba yun. Okay? This one, this is highly yan. I-ano natin, i-highlight natin. Highly highlighted population parameter. Okay, so we will just be using two parameters which were lectured a while ago. So what are the two parameters that we talked about a while ago? We have your population mean, which is your mu, and your population proportion. Again, what's the difference between the two? Ito, mean is your average. Population mean. This one is your proportion or your fraction. Ayan ha. So therefore, ito, either 0 to 1 or 0 to 100%. Sorry, 0% to 100%. Yan yung kaibahan ng dalawa ha. Okay? And then we also have here your two types, your null or your negative. And the second one is alternative or affirmative. Okay? So same banana sa ba? Either null or negative, alternative or affirmative. Pero for the sake of discussion and of course unison, we will just utilize null and alternative. So if you have printed the lecture notes, please highlight null and alternative. Yun yung dalawang gagamitin natin. I will not be mentioning negative and affirmative. Baka kasi mapagpaliktad ninyo. Alright, so you may take a screenshot and then I will clear the drawings. We proceed to the types. Okay, we start with your null hypothesis. It says there, null hypothesis can be represented by either H naught or your H sub O or H sub 0. We will be utilizing the one in red, which is H sub O or H naught. This is a statistical hypothesis that states that there is no significant difference. No difference between a parameter and a certain value. Okay, please highlight those. So no difference between a parameter and a particular value. The hypothesis simply says that the observations obtained from the sample are just result of pure chance. Yan. So pag sinabi natin no difference, wala silang pagkaibahan. Therefore, the two variables, what are we talking about? Parameter, yan, and your value, any value. Since wala daw silang pagkakaibahan, therefore, the two are equal. Okay? Let's try to convert the definition through mathematical symbol. So sabi natin, your null hypothesis, which is represented by this, H naught or H sub 0 or H sub O. Yan. Sabi natin kanina, we are going to compare two. Diba? We have your parameter and then your value. And on your parameter, sabi natin, we will only utilize two parameters. What are those two parameters ulit na gagamitin natin? We have your mu, which is your population mean, and your population proportion. Dalawa. Okay? Either mean or population. So ipakita natin. So your HO can be your mean, population mean, or pwede rin namang population proportion. And a certain value. Hindi natin alam kung ano yung value na yon. So we can use arbitrary variables like X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Ikaw ang bahala kung anong trip mo. But for me, I will utilize K. Yan, K. Alright? And now, sabi dito, we are going to compare. We are going to state that there is no difference. So since wala silang diferensya, itong parameter at itong value na to, yung parameter at yung value na to, anong ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin, they are equal. Equal. Kasi nga walang difference. Wala silang pagkakaiba. Di magkapareho sila. E di equal sila. Okay? So as I mentioned a while ago, aside from your K, pwede mong i-represent yan ng any variables. Other books, guys, will use mu sub 1 is equal to mu sub 2. Kasi ito, si parameter mo, which is your mean, and ito is your value. Yang value na kahit anong gamitin mo, pwede. Pwedeng alpha and so on. So for the other references, you might check that they were able to use mu sub 1 is equal to mu sub 2. Or pwede rin naman dito, we have your p sub 1 or your proportion 1 is equal to your proportion 2. Pwede rin naman. Okay? So wag malito in case na may makita kayong ganito sa other references. Again, these two, yan, mga yan are just arbitrary variables. Kasi nga, and a particular value, hindi natin alam. Kahit anong value yan, pwedeng 0, negative, pwedeng 1, and so on, pwedeng 1 million. Okay? I hope null hypothesis is clear. Null hypothesis, ang isipin natin, no difference. Dahil no difference, equal sila. Right? So I will now clear all of the drawings. Clear ko na ha. We move on to alternatives. Okay, alternative, we are going to use HA. Please take note. Okay, yung naka-red. H sub A or your H1 or your alternative hypothesis is a statistical hypothesis that states that a parameter and a particular value, ganun ulit, kanina. Pero instead na no difference, walang pagkakaiba, it already has a difference. Meron na siyang pagkakaiba. Okay? So the hypothesis says that the observations obtained from the sample are influenced by some non-random cause. So kanina, random lang siya kaya wala siyang pagkakaiba. Ngayon, non-random cause kaya meron na siyang difference. Okay? So if we try to, again, represent it using our symbols, So yung parameter daw natin, ano ulit yung parameter na gagamitin natin? Dalawa lang. Either your mean or proportion. Hindi pwedeng magsabay yan. Iisa lang. Okay? So since hindi natin alam, i-represent natin yung dalawa. So we have here your population mean and of course your population proportion. So kung kanina, no difference yung null which is equal, kung ito, meron siyang significant difference, meron siyang difference. So ano yung difference niya? Hindi natin alam. Hindi natin alam, di ba? Which is not equal to a particular value. O, i-represent ko ulit siya as K. So dito, not equal to a certain value which is represented as K. Alright? Kasi nga, there's a difference. Hindi sila equal. Merong pagkakaiba. Kung hindi natin alam yung pagkakaiba, gagamitin natin yung not equal sign. Okay? So aside from that, we can also utilize what if yung pagkakaiba is that yung parameter mas malaki kesa sa particular value, greater. So ang pwede nating isulat dyan, greater than K. Pwede rin dito, yan, that your P would be greater than K. Kasi nga may pagkakaiba, there is a difference. Oh. And then, last scenario, if your parameter is less than your particular value. Okay? So, meron tayong tatlong scenario sa ating alternative hypothesis. Ulitin natin ha. Pag sa null hypothesis, no difference. Ibig sabihin, equal silang dalawa. Dito, there is a certain difference. Kaso, hindi natin alam yung difference. Kaya inonotate natin siya as first, not equal. But on the problem later, pag may sinabi doon na 1 is less, 1 is greater, yun na, gagamitin na natin tong dalawa. Either yan, tsaka yan. So, depende kung anong parameter ang sasabihin mamaya. Kung mean ba or proportion. Okay? And, kung maaalala ninyo, please take note of this. I-move ko nga muna itong ano. Nahirapan akong mag-sulat. Okay? So, later, sa inyong hypothesis, sa inyong alternative hypothesis. Kung may makikita kayong greater, yung mga yan, greater, tapos less, yan, sa inyong problem or sa inyong hypothesis, this entails that we will use your one-tailed test. One-tailed. One-tailed. Pero kung wala kayong makita sa inyong alternative hypothesis, wala kayong makitang direction kung may greater or less na nakalagay, you will use your two-tailed. Yan ha, two-tailed. Kung walang greater or less na nakalagay. Okay? So I hope that is clear. Because we will move on to the next slide. You may take a screenshot. We'll now clear all of the drawings. And so, summarize. So, null hypothesis is your H sub O or H naught and or H sub 0. Sa kabila, alternative hypothesis, HA or H1. But of course, we will use your H sub A. Ha? H sub A, hindi H1 for unison. Okay? And then, please take note that under your null hypothesis, wala siyang difference. No difference. Sa kabila naman, meron siyang difference. Okay? There is a difference dito. Yan. So, ano ulit yung difference niya? Not equal, pwedeng greater, pwedeng less. Yan, ha? So, dito, no difference. Therefore, this is just equal. And the most important thing, number 3. null hypothesis or your H sub O is the one being tested. Ito yung itetest natin later on sa hypothesis testing. Please take note, walang magtetest ng HA. Wala. Ang itetest natin is your null hypothesis. Okay? So, next tayo. Clear ko na. Ayan. So, symbols, na-introduce ko to kanina, pero let's try to generalize it further. Okay, so your types of hypothesis using symbols. Yan ha. So, sinabi ko kanina, null hypothesis. Ano na ulit yung symbolism natin? We have your H sub O or your H naught. Alternative hypothesis is your HA. Okay? So, dito, no difference. Dito, there is a difference. So, we will use your equal sign. So, kapag null hypothesis, equal ang gagamitin. Whereas, if it's alternative, pag hindi natin alam, not equal ang gagamitin. Kung alin ang mas malaki at mas maliit, not equal. Pero kapag stated sa inyong problem later on, that it is less than or greater than, gagamitin natin ito. Okay? So, since hindi natin alam kung alin ang mas malaki at mas maliit, this is under your non-directional. And since alam natin yung direction kung papunta pa siya doon or papunta doon, quote and unquote, these two are under your directional. Alright? And again, pag may direction, ano yung test na gagamitin natin? Is it one-tailed or two-tailed? Pag may direction, yan, pag may direction, ibig sabihin, we will use your one-tailed test. Paano kung walang direction? Your two-tailed test. Okay, I hope that's clear. So sa alternative hypothesis, there is a difference. Either they're not equal, hindi natin alam yung direction. Kung hindi natin alam yung direction, two-tailed siya. Kung alam natin yung direction, either less than or greater than, one-tailed siya. Okay? Absorb, absorb. Dami pang concepts. You may take a screenshot. Then I will now clear all of the drawings. Move on tayo sa next slide. Okay. Oh, don't get overwhelmed. Let's try to discuss. So under your hypothesis testing, sinabi natin kanina that we will use two parameters, right? The first parameter is your population mean, mu. Okay? So ang isipin natin muna later on kung maggagawa tayo ng ating hypothesis is that ano yung gagamitin nating parameter? Is it mean or pangalawa, which is your proportion? Ayan, proportion ba or mean? Okay? Next, anong gagamitin natin? One-tailed or two-tailed? Paano natin malalaman ulit kung one-tailed or two-tailed? Tignan natin yung problem kung may direction. So kung may direction siya, we will utilize your one-tailed. Kung wala siyang direction, hindi natin alam kung which one is greater than the other, we will utilize your two-tailed. Ma'am, ano ba yung one-tailed test, two-tailed test? Okay. So if you can still recall this from your senior high school, this is called your normal distribution curve or your bell curve, right? Pagandahan pa kayo ng ganito dati. Okay. So when we say two-tailed tests, we have a certain areas. Diba? This one are divided into areas. We have your area of rejection and then your area of acceptance. Okay. We have your area of rejection or rejection area or rejection region. Then your area of acceptance. Usually, if it's two-tailed, yung area of rejection ninyo is divided into two. Yan. Yan. This is your rejection region or your area of rejection. Pag sinabi mong one-tailed right, of course, dito siya sa right. This is your rejection region. Pag sabi mong one-tailed left, naman sa kabila ang kanyang rejection region. Ayan. Pero wag kayong mag-alala, hindi na tayo magmamanually compute and so on, unlike yung senior high school. Mas madali na lang later on. But you still need to know ano na ulit yung one-tail test, two-tail test, ano mga yan. Okay? So again, hypothesis testing, either you use your mean or your proportion. So kung yung mean ang iyong gagamitin, of course, you will use your population mean. Yan. Kaya naka-mu lahat yan, population mean. Ha? Okay? And then this one, yung k, again, this is just an arbitrary variable. It can be your mu sub 1 is equal to mu sub 2. Pwede rin namang x, y, z, mga ganyan. Okay? So that's your mean, how you represent it. Right? So punta naman tayo sa proportion, which is just the same. Pretty much the same. Papalitan mo lang yung mean ng proportion, which is your p. So if you already know that it is under your proportion, tapos two-tailed siya, gagamitin mo ito. Yan. I-clear ko na yung drawing, ha? Okay. So kung alam mo na yung parameter that you will use later on is proportion and it's two-tailed, ayan, gamitin mo na to. Ito na yung iyong null hypothesis and this is your alternative hypothesis. Ganon. Okay, so pinalitan lang natin yung mu kanina ng p. Kasi nga, we're dealing with your proportion. And your proportion is denoted by your p. P ha, hindi siya p hat. P hat is your sample proportion. We're talking about parameters. Okay? Next tayo. Yan. So, we further understand the concepts of null and alternative hypotheses by answering, of course, our problems. O, sige, isulat lang ulit natin ha kung ano yung steps paano natin gagawin ang null and alternative hypothesis. The first step, sulat ko na lang dito, okay, is to know ano yung parameter na ginamit doon sa situation. And what are the two parameters again? We only have your mu and then your proportion. Next, nagagawin natin. What is the direction? I mean, is it directional? Ito na lang. Was there a direction or non-directional? Bakit kailangan nating malaman yan? So that we will know later on, babalik tayo sa tables kung anong gagamitin natin. Is it one-tailed or two-tailed? So sabi natin, pag directional siya, this is one-tailed. Ba? Kapag non-directional siya, hindi natin alam which one is greater or lesser, this is your two-tailed test. Okay? I hope that's clear. So we apply that one to our problem number 1. So a maternity hospital claims that the mean birth weight of babies delivered in their charity ward is 2.5 kilograms. But that is not what a group of obstetricians believe. Okay, this is our scenario. We need to come up with your first null hypothesis and then later your alternative hypothesis. Okay, first step, we need to know the parameter. Ano kaya yung parameter na nagamit? Is it mean or proportion? So obviously, sinabi dito na mean birth is 2.5 kilograms daw. So again, your H sub 0, H null is always equal. Diba? Yung symbolism kanina, equal. So we will utilize your parameter population mean equal to 2.5 kilograms. And next one, your alternative, sabi natin sa alternative, there is a significant difference. There is a difference. Pero sinabi ba dito kung anong difference? May direction ba? Wala, di ba? Wala naman sinabing one is less, kaya smaller or greater, walang sinabi. So anong gagamitin natin? Non-directional. Okay? Pag non-directional ulit, ano yung symbolism natin sa non-directional? It is not equal. Diba? 2.5 kilograms. Ganun lang. So mathematically, that's how you state your alternative and null hypothesis. Plural kasi hypothesis, yung singular. Okay. I hope you understand that. Pero we have more examples coming on our way. Number 2, a teacher training institution is concerned about the rate of their graduates who pass the teacher's licensure examination. It is alarming for them that the rate is below 35%. Okay? So dito sa number 2, problem number 2. Ang first question natin, what is the parameter that was used? Is it your population mean or your population proportion? Type in your answers on our chat box. Is it mean or proportion? Number 2. Wag mahihiyang magsagot. Kaya kayo naki-zoom para makisagot, di ba? Para maintindihan. Type in your answers. Okay. Right. So thank you for sharing your answers. The correct answer is proportion. Obviously, it is in percentage. Di ba ang sinabi natin, ang proportion ranges from either 0 to 1 pag nakadecimal or 0% to 100%. Di ba? Ito, 35%. Proportion yan. Alright. So, ang gagamitin natin is your P. Susulat na natin. HO and then HA. Alam na natin na P. Susunod, ang ating HO is always equal. Ha? Isipin natin, equal yan lagi. Kung babalikan nyo yung previous na slides. Which is our 35%. Yan. P is equal to 35% or you can also write it in decimal value. Ikaw ang bahala. P is equal to 0.35. Pwede. Okay? Next one, dito na natin iisipin. Ano kaya itong alternative natin? Is it directional or non-directional? Okay? So it is alarming for them that this rate is below 35%. Is it directional or non-directional? You may share your answers on our chat box. Directional kaya siya or non-directional? Okay, good job. And actually, may nag-share na ng kanyang symbol. Thank you, Don, Ronald. So obviously, it is below. Okay? May direction below. Therefore, it's less than 35%. Or you may also write it as P less than 0.35. Yan ha. So nasa math naman tayo. Own your activity later on. Please use symbols. Wag na kayong mag-state ng there is no significant difference. Wag na. Kaya ito, mas mabilis. Okay? You may take a screenshot. We'll move on to the next examples. Para mas maintindihan natin paano gumawa. Kasi this is the first step on your hypothesis testing. Clear ko na yung drawings, ha? Alright. So, move tayo sa number 3 and number 4. Okay, a pharmaceutical company claims that their pain reliever capsule is 70% effective. However, may papansin na isang clinical test na nagsasabi na 65/100 daw ang kanyang effectiveness or 0.6565% ang kanyang effectiveness. Now, we try to construct your null and your alternative hypothesis. Obviously, yan, Proportion siya. Wala tayong nakitang mean, wala tayong nakitang average na salita. Okay? Naka-percentage, therefore we will use your P. So for those who are trying there, you may also answer it on your own. Okay? So we have your HO, which is your P, and then your HA alternative, which is P. Okay? And it is always equal to 70%. Don't get confused with the other value. Ang titignan ninyo is the claim, yung itetest natin. So a pharmaceutical company claims, yan ha, claims that it is 70%. Therefore, the 70% must be the one to use, okay, to be used on your hypothesis or hypothesis. All right. So next one, but a clinical test on this capsule showed that it is over 65 over 100 effectiveness. Dito, panggulo lang ito actually. If you see that there is really no effect towards the hypothesis that is being tested, wag nyo siyang pansinin. Kung may ibang values, like kunyari, another company is saying that it is 60% effective. Okay? Another study yun. Hindi yun makaka-affect sa ating hypothesis or ating claim na it is 70%. So since makikita natin dito na wala namang sinasabi na less than, greater, or more efficient, less efficient, therefore, wala siyang direction. Okay? It is not equal to 70%, pwedeng 0.7, 0.70, kayo ang bahala. Alright. So baka na medyo naguluhan kayo doon. Ibalik natin sa number 2. So kung babalikan natin ng number 2, tignan ninyo, yung below 35%, it affects the hypothesis that we're talking about, yung 35%. Whereas dito sa problem natin sa number 3, yung 65 over 100, wala siyang effect dito sa 70%. Okay? So kung wala siyang effect, alisin nyo lang yan. Therefore, wala siyang direction. Wala siyang sinabing less than or greater than siya sa 70%. Okay. Next, we move on to your fourth problem. A politician believes that he is favored by 85% of voters. Yan. And an opponent says, masyado namang mataas yung claim mo. So, yung claim na mismo ang inaano niya. Okay? So, doon pa lang may idea na kayo, ha? Yan. So, try nating i-analyze. 85%, that is your proportion. Okay? Portion. And it says there, it is always equal for your null hypothesis, which is 85% or 0.85, pwede. Tapos dito, too high. Masyado daw yan mataas. Yung 85% na sinasabi mo. So anong gagawin natin kung masyadong mataas? Bababaan natin. Too high. Masyadong mataas yung claim mo na sinasabi mo. So there is a certain direction here towards the claim. Unlike your number 3, wala siyang binabanggit tungkol sa claim. Wala siyang binabanggit. Right? So that's number 3, and then your number 4. Next set of questions. I will clear the drawings na, ha? Right? Doon tayo sa number 5 and number 6. Ayan. So a barangay official claims that the mean family income of his constituents is 30,000 pesos. Sana all. But some group of residents believe that it is not true. Okay, so for number 5, is it mean or proportion? Obviously, may nakalagay na mean dyan. So your H naught or your H sub 0, mean, H A or your alternative, mean. It is always equal to the certain value, which is 30,000, yung average. Tapos yung isa, it claims that it is not true. Hindi naman niya sinabing greater or less. Diba? Therefore, wala siyang direction. 30,000. Okay? And then number 6, a telecommunication company claims that they have 80% of all postpaid subscribers, but this is being refuted by the rival company. Alright. So dito tayo sa number 6, ano kaya yung ating gagamitin? Mean or proportion? Obviously, it's proportion, naka-percentage. Okay? Proportion. Sa kabila din. Proportion. Okay? So ito, equal siya sa 80%, pwede rin 0.80. And dito, it is being refuted by the rival company. Wala namang in-state din, just like number 5, kung lower ba yon or higher than 80%, wala siyang sinabi. Therefore, non-directional din siya. 80%.
Nasaan po ang charger ko po?
Hindi ko alam. May klase ako. Oh, sorry. Ayun. So, you may take a screenshot and then we move on to the next. Okay. So, next set of problems tayo. Sana mas nagiging klaro habang dumadagdag yung example, hindi mas nagiging abstract ha. I hope. Okay, so number 7, sabi dito average. Average consumption of residents in a certain town is 300 kilowatt per hour per month. But the town mayor says the town's residents consume less. Okay, so we start parameter. Gagamitin natin is yung mean. Obviously, kasi ang mean is average. Okay? So, H sub 0, population mean, H sub A, mean. Right? It is always equal here, 300 kilowatt per hour per month. Whereas for the other hypothesis, which is your alternative, okay, may direction ba? Obviously, may less ito. So, less. 300 kilowatt per hour per month. Okay? Next one, number 8. Number 8. So, mean. Ulit. I hope, no, you are answering the problems on your own already. Sana. Yan. Pero if not, okay lang. You listen and then later you try to go back to the recording and do the activity on your own. Okay? So dito, mean weight daw is 46 kilogram. Mean weight. Guys, hindi 10 to 12 ha. Mean weight ng mga children aged 10 to 12 daw is 48 kilos. So it is 48 kilograms. A small survey results in an average weight of 52 kilograms. Okay? So parang kanina yung problem. Ito does not affect your 48 kilograms, which is the claim. Ano ngayon kung 52? Hindi naman niya sinasabing mas wala nang direction. Hindi niya dinidispute yung claim. Yan. So ito, panggulo lang yan. Basta kapag hindi niya dinidispute, hindi niya kine-question yung claim, wala siyang sinasabi against the claim, panggulo lang yun. Okay? So, therefore, wala talaga siyang direction. Yan. 48 kilograms. Ha? Again, take note na baka mamaya 52 yung ginamit ninyo dito and bis na 48, this is the claim. This is the claim. A local claims that it is 48 kilograms, hindi 52. This is the claim. All right? You may take a screenshot and then we move on to the next problems. Ayan. Numbers 9 and then number 10. So a fitness club claims that their routines can elevate heart rates up to 200 beats per minute on an average. So a critic says that this is an overestimate of the actual average. OA daw masyado yung 200. Okay? So dito we can see the term average. Therefore, we will use your mu. Yan. So this one is always equal 200 beats per minute. And for the other one, ang term natin is overestimate. OA daw masyado yun. Parang kanina, it's too low, it's too high. So kanina yung term natin, it is too high, kaya ang gagamitin natin, bababaan natin. Parang the same din siya sa overestimate, masyadong mataas. So anong gagawin natin kapag masyadong mataas? Bababaan natin. So bababaan natin siya, you have your 200 BPM. Ha? Overestimate. Next, number 10. A school reports an average grade of 84. Okay, that's our claim. Mean, your average, and then your alternative. Ayan. Your mean is 84. Some parents believe that this is an underestimate. Underestimate daw siya. So meaning masyadong mababa yung 84 na average. Dapat taasan natin. This is very feasible, okay? If you have a class wherein all of your students are excellent. Maaaring lahat ng mga estudyante mo sobrang tatalino that if you compute their average, baka 80 or 90 ang kanilang average. So when we say underestimate, masyadong mababa yan. So anong gagawin natin? Tataasan natin yan. Okay? So overestimate, masyadong mataas, kaya ang gagawin natin, bababaan. Underestimate, masyadong mababa, anong gagawin natin? Tataasan. Right? Let me take a screenshot of the answers to numbers 9 and 10. Okay. While you're taking a screenshot, let me check the chat box. Ma'am, present po. Wala po kasi kaming kuryente kanina. The username iPhone, it's okay. Just type in your complete name on our chat box. For those who are late and coming in, type in your complete name on our chat box, please. Right? So I will now clear all of the drawings. Yan. Okay, last two problems na. Okay. So a popcorn company says that at least 95% of their kernels will pop when microwave. A critic says it's too high to claim. It's too high of a claim, sabi niya. Alright? So tignan natin dito. We have here the term at least. So mathematically, when we say at least, it's greater than or equal to. Okay? Since may equal din naman dyan, we can still use this as our null hypothesis. Okay? We can still utilize 95% as your hypothesis, either null or alternative. Okay? Kasi nga, at least is greater than or equal to. Right? So we have here your H naught. So it says there 95%. So anong gagamitin natin? Of course, it's P, proportion. P, proportion. At least. Okay? Still, merong equal doon. 95% or 0.95, pwede rin. And then, this is too high. Masyado kang ambisyoso, girl, sabi ng isang company. Or isang critic pala. Hindi 95%. Baka naman 70% lang. So, anong gagamitin natin kapag too high daw siya? Babaan natin. Alright? Next one, we have number 12. A trainer says his team athletes have an average of 92 physical fitness rating. But someone in the crowd thinks that they still have to work harder in order to reach this particular rate. Okay? So what will we do here? Yan. Of course, still, we need to check whether or not what's the parameter to be used. So sabi dito, average. Yan. So we will utilize your mu. So yung average daw is 92 physical fitness rating. 92 daw yung kanilang rating. Sorry, that must be HO. Erase ko na lang. Okay. Next would be your alternative hypothesis or your HA. Okay. So, dito na tayo. Tanungin ko nga kayo. So, what do you think is our alternative hypothesis? But someone in the crowd, kasi medyo comprehensive yung problem, someone in the crowd thinks that they still need to work harder in order to reach the rate which is 92. Is it directional or non-directional? If it is directional, please place the symbol that you will use. You may share your answer on our chat box. If directional siya, you please place the symbol to be used. Let me see. Non-directional, non-directional. Other answers aside from non-directional? Medyo tricky ito eh. Okay? Non-directional. Sige, so balikan natin. But someone in the crowd think that they still need to work harder para ma-reach nila yung rate. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Yung 92 na yan, masyadong mataas. Masyado siyang mataas to the point na kailangan mong mag-double work para lang ma-reach yung 92. Diba? Kailangan mong mag-double work, triple work para makuha yung 92, which is the average na sinasabi nila. Okay? So meaning, there is a certain direction, masyado siyang mataas. So kailangan natin na babaan. Okay? So there is a certain direction, no? Tingnan nyo. Someone in the crowd thinks that they still need to work harder. Kasi nga masyado siyang mataas. Masyado siyang mataas na i-achieve, so you need to work harder. Since masyado siyang mataas, babaan natin. Less than 92. Okay? So, others were able to get it. Yan. Kami symbols. Yan. Others were able to get it. Okay? It's okay for those who were confused kasi nga medyo tricky ito. Yan, ha? So bakit kailangan mo mag-work harder? Kasi nga masyadong mataas yung ating ina-attain na goal, 'di ba? Hindi ka naman mag-work ng harder kung nalampasan mo na 'yon. Kung masyadong mababa 'yon, 'di ba? Minsan nga kapag alam natin na yung passing is just 20 out of 100, pag nakukuha ka na ng 20 out of 100, pasado ka na. Hindi ka na masyadong magpa-perform. So magpa-perform ka kapag sinabi ng teacher mo that the passing score is 90 all over 100. Okay? 'Di ba? Medyo nakaka-relate tayo dito sa number 12. So kung masyadong mataas yung iyong yung standard ng teacher, anong gagawin mo? Super mag-work hard ka. Pagpupuyatan mo 'yan. So, okay? Kung masyadong mataas, babaan natin. Less than 92. Okay? So, time check. 4:36. Okay? So, the remaining 4 minutes will be your bio break, our bio break. We will go back to the Zoom meeting at exactly 4:40 for the next set of concepts. Kasi madami pa. Ha? So, balik tayo ng 4:40. Mute lang ako, tsaka stop ko lang yung video. For those who have questions, you may type it on our chat box para pagbalik natin ng 4:40, we can answer them. Okay? Thank you. See you later after 3 minutes. Okay. We continue. Okay. So after knowing how to create your null and then your alternative hypothesis, yan, we now further lecture some of the concepts towards your hypothesis testing. Okay? So simple recall tayo kanina from the discussion a while ago. Yan. So sabi natin that your H naught or your HO, we are just checking or we are just stating that there is no difference. So either you may use your mu sub 1 or mu sub 2, or pwede rin naman na your HO will be your mu is equal to K. HO is mu is equal to K. Pwede. Next one, we have your alternative hypothesis. Pwedeng not equal kapag there is no direction stated. Pero if there is a direction, either pwede siyang greater or lesser than or less than. Yan ha. Next, the main goal of hypothesis testing is to reject the null hypothesis. That is why your H sub 0 is the one being tested. So, ang main goal lang natin ay iti-test natin yung HO or yung H naught. So, if there is enough evidence to reject it. So, sinabi natin that there is no, yan, dito sa H naught, diba? There is no difference, kaya nga siya equal. So, dito, there is. Yan, sa HA. So, if you are going to reject your null hypothesis, if you are going to reject that there is no difference, therefore, you will tell or conclude that there is a difference. Yan, yung HA na ang iyong i-accept. Okay? Or technically, quote and unquote, accept. Yan. Right? So if we reject your HO, this implies that there is significant difference. The difference is significant. Okay? Kasi nga, nireject mo na there is no difference. Therefore, sasabihin mo later on, i-conclude mo na there is a difference and it is significant. Ano ba yung concept ng significant dito? So kunyari, you have the numbers 10 and let's say 12. And versus the numbers, let's say 99 and 1999. Okay. So both numbers, yan, at saka ito, box ko. Yan. Tsaka yan, there exists a difference. Diba? There exists a difference. The question is, which among the two has a more significant difference? Obviously, ito. Diba? So ito, there is a difference, but the difference is not significant compared to the two numbers here, 99 and 1999. Okay? So that's your significant difference. Relating it to your relationship. Kunyari, meron kang jowa. Ang tanong, meron kang jowa. Significant ba siya sa'yo? Mahal mo ba talaga siya? Mahal ka ba talaga niya? Okay? Parang ganon. So there should exist a significant difference dapat. And so that's hypothesis testing. Our main goal is to reject the null hypothesis through gathering of enough evidence. Dapat meron tayong enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis para sabihin natin that there is a significant difference. Okay? Next. Clear ko na ha? Alright. So dito, focus tayo. HO, yan. Kasi HO nga yung tinetest natin, di ba? So we are going to test if your H naught is true or false. Okay? If your H naught or H sub 0 is true, what should you do? You must not reject it. Do not reject it. True kasi. So, found out mo na, ay, false pala siya. So, what's the right decision? Since false siya, anong gagawin mo? I-reject mo siya. Reject your null hypothesis. Ganun naman dapat, di ba? So, kung tama, wag mong i-reject. Kung mali, i-reject mo. Okay? So note, we usually use the phrase, do not reject the null hypothesis rather than accept. Kaya, you rejected a true null hypothesis, it's called your type 1 error. If you did not reject, okay, if you false null hypothesis, it is called your type 2 error. Yeah. So make sure na later on your activities, you need to come up with the correct decision. And avoid errors later on. Okay? So I will now clear the writings, ha? We move on to the next slide. Okay? Let's further discuss your errors in hypothesis testing. Okay? Type 1 error or your alpha, and your type 2 error, your beta. Okay? So alpha is actually your level of significance. Ay, patch magka-tikit. Level of significance. Your level of significance usually is 5%. Yan. Level of significance plus your level of confidence. Ayaw niya magsulat. Confidence. Which is 95% comprises your research, which is 100%. Okay? So your level of significance, your alpha, yan. Pag nakita nyo yung alpha, ang meaning yan, level of significance, usually it is 5%. If you add it to your level of confidence, that becomes your 100%. Okay? Your significant level, and of course, the degree of certainty that your research is correct or not. Since hypothesis testing deals with is it significant? Yes or no? Which one is more significant? Yes or no? Okay. So hypothesis testing is also called your significance testing. Okay. Kasi nga, laging merong level of significance na kasama dito sa hypothesis testing na yan. Hindi mawala-wala yan. Okay? So balikan natin, type 1 error or your alpha, your level of significance. Okay? Occurs when you reject the null hypothesis when it is actually true. Yung pinakita ko kanina, true yung null hypothesis mo pero ni-reject mo siya. So the decision is that you said that it is significant where in fact it is not significant. Kasi nga true yung null hypothesis mo. And your null hypothesis states that there is no significant difference. You rejected it. Therefore, your decision is, it is significant. On the other hand, type 2 error, we have here your beta. Yeah, occurs when you do not reject your null hypothesis when it is actually false. Okay? So yung guys ha, we're talking about the null hypothesis here. Null hypothesis which states that there is no difference. Okay? Take note, nasa null hypothesis lang ang hypothesis testing. Okay? So dito, this is false daw. There is a certain difference. There is a certain difference. Pero anong ginawa mo? Sinabi mo na there is no significant difference. Yun yung decision mo. Pero in reality, meron. False nga eh. Yan, false. Kung false ito, ibig sabihin there is. Okay? So those are your type 1 and then your type 2 errors. You may take a screenshot if you want. Okay? Move on to the next slide para mas maintindihan pa natin kung paano ba yung type 1 tsaka type 2 error. Let's have an example. So let's say your H sub 0 and then your HA. Ay, erase natin. Okay. Bakit kasi nasa gitna ko sinulat? Sa gilid na lang para kasya. Ayan. So scenario, your HO is always a positive statement. Kung gagamit man tayo ng example ha. So HO, you are COVID-free. Positive naman yan. Kasi wala kang COVID, di ba? So usually, yung alternative is a negative statement. So kabaliktaran neto, you are not COVID-free, therefore you are COVID positive. Yan na lang. Yan. So kunyari, we have two hypotheses. So situation lang to so that you will understand type 1 and type 2 error. Okay, so your null hypothesis, this is the one being tested ha. This is the one being tested. Kung true ba siya or false. So kung true siya, ibig sabihin, you are COVID-free. Kung false siya, ibig sabihin, you are COVID positive. Ganon, di ba? Okay, so type 1 error tayo. Type 1. Yan. So ang ating type 1, we have here your decision, reality, and of course, what's the outcome of that? Okay. Dagdagan natin ang outcome. Ayan. So type 1, sabi dito, you are to reject. Reject the null hypothesis. So ang decision mo daw dito is to reject the null hypothesis which states that it is true. So true daw ito, you are really COVID-free. You are COVID-free. So wala ka talagang COVID. Ngunit, anong ginawa mo? Anong decision ang ginawa mo? Nireject mo ito, yung reality. Nireject mo na COVID-free. Anong sinabi mo sa patient? Ay, you are COVID positive pala. Instead of saying the true value, which is wala siyang COVID, nireject mo yung reality na wala talaga siyang COVID. Ang sinabi mo ay, you are COVID positive, unfortunately. So what would be the outcome? Siyempre yung pasyente mo, he or she will experience, of course, anxiety. Yan. He or she needs to be isolated. Yan. Pero sa totoo lang, COVID-free siya. Pero dahil nagkaroon ka ng type 1 error sa decision mo, instead na you will not reject it, kasi nga true, you will just stay na sasabihin lang sa kanya, uy, COVID-free ka pala. Pero hindi nakagawa ka ng type 1 error, ni-reject mo. Ang sinabi mo, ay, COVID positive ka. So yung outcome sa patient, nagkaroon siya ng anxiety, kailangan niya ma-isolate, kailangan niya mag-take ng medicine, ng meds. So that's type 1 error. You rejected a null hypothesis that is true. Okay? So tingnan naman natin, compare natin siya sa type 2. Type 2 error natin. So ang decision natin, do not reject. Oh, wag mo daw i-reject. Yan ha, sa type 2 error. Pero wag niyong gagawin to ha. Do not commit the errors. Okay. You do not reject the null hypothesis when it is actually false. False ang ating null hypothesis. So anong kabaliktaran nito? Since false daw ito na hindi siya COVID-free, ano nga yun? Ibig sabihin, COVID positive siya. So in reality, meron talaga siyang COVID. May COVID talaga siya. Pero anong sinabi mo? Instead na sinabi mong, uy, may COVID ka, hindi mo inaccept yun. Did not reject it. Uy, COVID pa, ay, uy, you did not reject this, your null hypothesis, na COVID-free ka. Okay? Ano yung do not reject ha? Null, null. Ang isipin ninyo, yung null. Null. Okay? Instead na i-reject mo yan, yung hindi mo, instead na hindi mo ni-reject yan, ang sinabi mo sa kanya, okay, na you are COVID-free. Pero in reality, COVID positive talaga siya. Kasi nga false yung ating null hypothesis. So you failed to reject your null hypothesis when it is actually false. Anong outcome nito? So instead na sinabi mo sa patient na you are COVID positive, well in fact, COVID positive talaga siya. Ang sinabi mo sa kanya, you are COVID-free. Ito ang sinabi mo sa kanya, you are COVID-free. So what would be the outcome? Pinauwi mo siya. Wala kang COVID, sinabi mo sa kanya. Well, in reality, COVID positive siya. Anong nangyari? Mas nakahawa siya. Yan. Nakaspread siya ng virus. So ano yung error na nagawa mo? Type 2. Type 2 na siya. False yung statement, hindi nga siya COVID-free, ibig sabihin positive siya. Imbes na sinabi mong positive siya, pinanindigan mo na COVID-free siya. That is your type 2 error. Okay? Pinanindigan mong COVID-free siya kasi nagkamali ka, pinanindigan mo, hindi COVID-free ka pa rin. Pero alam mo sa sarili mo na hindi talaga siya COVID-free. Anong nangyari? Pinauwi mo siya, nakahawa siya lalo. That's type 2 error. Okay? So I hope mas clear yung ating situations when it comes to your errors. Yan. And you may take a screenshot. Clear natin ang drawings. We move on to the next slide. Okay? Hypothesis testing in the judiciary. Okay? Judiciary sa batas. Yan. Siyempre, H0 is always positive. HA, medyo negative yan. So, example, yung ating HO is innocent ka. Inosente ka talaga. And then you're guilty. HA is you are guilty. Okay, type 1 error. Paano mangyayari ang type 1 error? Yan. So in reality, you really are innocent. Inosente ka talaga kasi nga your HO is true. Type 1, HO is true. Therefore, inosente ka talaga. Pero ano yung decision? Instead na hindi nila ito i-reject, na inosente ka talaga, anong ginawa nila? Ni-reject nila yan, at sinabi nilang guilty ka. That's type 1 error. Okay? Next, type 2 error natin. So in reality, guilty ka talaga. So your HO is false. Hindi ka innocent. Guilty ka talaga. Pero instead na sasabihin ng judge na you are guilty, anong sinabi ng judge? You are innocent. Okay? Marami bang nakaka-relate sa type 2 error? Sa politics, di ba? Dami-dami ng mga ebidensya. Pero ang decision, innocent pa rin ako. Pero in reality, guilty kasi there are efficient evidence. Okay? O example lang yun. Baka sabihin nyo ano ah. Ayan. So, let's further discuss the application of your hypothesis testing in the judiciary. So type 1 error, yung pinakita ko kanina, if you are convicted to a certain crime that you did not commit, it is called your miscarriage of justice. Yan. Type 2 error naman, lapses in the result and the criminals either remaining at large or receiving sanctions that are below a socially optimal level. Impunity ang tawag doon, or errors of impunity. So example, yung example kanina sa miscarriage of justice, talagang innocent ka pero sinabing guilty ka. Miscarriage of justice. Impunity, talagang guilty ka pero sinabi na innocent ka. Like for example, ang talagang nararapat sa crime mo is let's say death penalty. Pero since nagkaroon ng type 2 error, here comes impunity. Instead na death penalty ang dapat sa crime mo, hindi sila makahanap ng evidence para makonvict ka. Anong nangyari? Imbes na death penalty, siguro community service na lang. Or nag-serve ka na lang ng 20 years in prison. Ganon. So that's type 2 error, impunity. Type 1 error, miscarriage of justice. With respect to, of course, judiciary. Yan. And further, yan, examples tayo ng miscarriage of justice, type 1 error. So the story of Timothy Evans. So Evans' wife and infant daughter were killed. Yan, Piman, 1949. Okay? Evans was convicted of murder for for the death of his daughter, and then later on was hanged the year after. Tingnan niyo, isang taon lang nahang na, 1950. However, after 15 years, it was determined that the real killer is Evans' co-tenant, which is that serial killer, John Christie. Okay, very sad story, no? Namatayan ka na nga ng asawa, tsaka anak, ikaw pa yung na-convict. Innocent ka, pero dahil may type 1 error, may miscarriage of justice, imbis na hindi nila i-reject na innocent ka, they rejected it. Sinabi nila na guilty ka. Okay? So imagine siguro kung ako, 'di ba? Talagang manlulumo ako dun eh. So, in reality, sa panahon ngayon, may mga tao talagang ganito. They can kill their wife and husband. Like Christopher Watts, if you know the story of the crime committed by Christopher Watts, trending siya and his wife is Shannon. Shannon is pregnant. At the same time, meron silang dalawang kids. He killed Shannon and then later he killed the two kids. Buong anak niya yung mga yun. Hindi anak ni Shannon sa iba. Okay? Pero it's very sad, ano, that stories like this really occurs. Okay? Another example, we have a Georgia man who served 17 years of a 20-year sentence, has been exonerated from his rape conviction and released from prison. After a judge agreed that the new analysis of DNA evidence clears him. Ayan. So, miscarriage of justice dito. Innocent talaga siya. Pero dahil, yan, dagdag na natin ng racial discrimination, most likely yung mga black people talaga. Wala silang chance to fight for themselves, to look for a good lawyer. Kahit naman ngayon, meron pa ring racial discrimination. So, he is convicted of 20 years in jail, 3 years na lang para matapos yung kanyang conviction, saka lang lumabas yung DNA result na hindi talaga siya yung nang-rape. Okay? Usually, the state compensates the years of loss. Babayaran nila yan. Pero syempre, you really cannot compensate the time na nawala. 17 years is 17 years. Right? Buti nga sa ibang bansa, ganyan eh. Super ano yung kanilang technology when it comes to crimes. Dito sa Pilipinas, marami ding nako-convict na talagang hindi nila ginawa. At mamamatay na sila, hindi pa rin sila nakakalaya. Okay? Minsan, kung makakalaya man sila, hindi kagaya ng ibang bansa na bibigyan ka ng compensation kasi nagkamali sila. Sa Pilipinas, alam naman natin na sa third world country tayo, usually, wala talagang ganun. Alright? Next example natin, we have errors of impunity, type 2 error naman to. So this girl, Carla Homalka, is a serial killer who was granted immunity in exchange for her testimony against her lover, Paul Bernardo, for his murders. She portrayed herself as an abused victim, but later evidence proved she was in fact equally culpable, okay? Culpable in taking part of the murders, but the Canadian authorities were not able to prosecute. Okay, so this is type 2 due to lack of evidence. Hindi nila ma-prosecute si Carla. Pero sa totoo lang, kasama talaga siya sa mga murders na nakomit ng kanyang partner, which is Paul Bernardo. So instead of him, siguro si Paul is death penalty, I'm not sure, or baka reclusion perpetua, imbes na ganun din kabigat yung makukuha niya na conviction, kasi parehas lang din naman silang pumatay ng kanyang partner, hindi siya na-convict sa ganun. So may impunity na nangyari. They were not able to prosecute her. That's type 2 error. Right? Okay. So now, let's provide more examples in understanding our errors. Number 1, Mary insists that she is 30 years old, where in fact, she is older. Mas patanda talaga siya. Okay? What type of error is she committing? Okay? Bago kayo sumagot ng type 1 o kaya type 2, let's understand first. Let's say your HO is that, syempre positive. So, she is 30 years old. Yan, positive. Pero where in fact, she is not. Yung null hypothesis natin, she's older. Older. Kaya, sorry. Sin natin yung semicolon. So, hindi tayo naglalagay ng mu or proportion kasi we're just dealing with one person, ha? It's not a parameter. So, dito, ganito muna ang ating representation. Just for you to visualize yung null tsaka yung alternative hypothesis. Yung alternative, she is in fact older talaga siya than 30 years old. Okay. So, what type of error is she committing? Mas matanda talaga siya sa 30 pero sinasabi niyang 30 years old siya. So dito pa lang makikita mo na that your HO is false. If your HO is false and instead of not rejecting it, you rejected it. Okay? I mean you are trying to instead na rejecting it, you are insisting that you are 30 years old. What type of error is that? It is type 2. Again, you have a false null hypothesis. Instead of rejecting it, kasi nga false, ang ginagawa mo, pinapanindigan mo na 30 years old ka. So that's type 2 error. Okay? False null hypothesis, pero pinapanindigan mo yung false na statement. That's type 2. Next would be, second problem. Stephen says that he is not bald. Where in fact, he is. He is really bald. Okay? So, dito ang ating H0. Positive naman ito lagi. Yung kalbo or hindi kalbo. Siyempre, hindi kalbo ang positive. Not bald. HA. Bald. Kalbo siya. Alright. So, in reality, kalbo talaga siya. Kalbo talaga siya. In reality. Pero sinasabi niya na hindi daw siya kalbo. So, this one is still false. Yan, false. Kasi in reality, kalbo talaga siya. Pero pinapanindigan niya na hindi siya kalbo. Still, this is a type 2 error. Yan. You are not rejecting a false null hypothesis. That's type 2. If you rejected a true null hypothesis, that's type 1 error. Okay? Sige, take a screenshot. Clear ko na yung drawings. Yan. So, steps in hypothesis testing, usually we'll do the calculations for your p-value method. Yan, manual calculation, hindi na natin ito gagawin. Okay? From your senior high school, if you came from STEM, p-value method was actually introduced manually. Pero we will not do that one since we are in the 21st century, tapos online distance learning naman tayo. We'll use a not statistical software kasi it involves coding. Mahirapan na nga kayo sa concepts, kailangan nyo pang mag-memorize ng codes. Instead, we will just utilize a website. Website na lang to. So website, I will teach you tomorrow. how are we going to compute the p-value using a certain website? Hindi na tayo manually magko-compute. So, ilagay lang natin yung data, click enter, and then we'll have the p-value. Okay? All right. So, we have here your statistical hypothesis. First, we are going to formulate your null and then your alternative hypothesis. I hope you already know, hypothesis. I hope you already know how. Yung kanina pinakita ko. Mathematically or we are going to use your symbols. Okay? And then identify the appropriate statistical test. This will be lecture tomorrow. Obtain the test and statistic p-value. Of course, we'll use the website, yung sinabi ko kanina. And the most important thing, the decision, you need to memorize this. You are to reject your null hypothesis if the p-value na lumabas is less than or equal to 0.05. And of equal importance would be you need to derive meaningful conclusion. So what? We answer. So what or what's next? What if you had computed a value that is smaller than 0.05? You rejected the null hypothesis. Anong mangyayari? Okay? So kunyari, positive daw to. So, he loves me. H not. Siyempre, negative. He loves her. Example lang to ha. So, kunyari, you already have your null and then your alternative. You had undergone the statistical test and you have computed a p-value. So, kunyari, lumabas na yung p-value mo is 0.03. Let's say 0.03 is lesser than or less than 0.05, tama? Less than siya. So, i-reject mo yung null. You will reject this. You will reject this. And you'll come up with this. He loves her. What's next? What can you draw out from that? So what if he loves her? Magpaparaya ka ba? Will you fight for your love? Makiba ka, wag sumuko? Non? So that's what we are going to do tomorrow. Yung hypothesis testing, compute, and of course, we derive a meaningful conclusion from the computed value. Hindi lang tayo titigil doon sa p-value natin. Dapat may conclusion. Ano nga yun? Ano na ang mangyayari after? Okay? That ends our lecture for this afternoon. For the rest of the minutes, it will be our open forum. If you have any questions, just unmute your microphone or just type it on our chat box. Again, for those who are late, please type in your complete name on our chat box. Questions, clarifications, if you have. After this Zoom meeting, please check your Canvas. There is an assessment, enhancement activity. Enhancement lang naman. It contains 4 questions, 2 of which will lead you or will ask you to come up with your null and then your alternative hypothesis. Yung isusulat nyo yung symbols ha, hindi yung words, yung symbols. And then 2 of which, the last 2 will be asking you kung type 1 error ba siya or type 2 error. Yun lang, 4 items. The due date will be tomorrow before 3:30 p.m. So I need to check if you were able to understand the lecture this afternoon before we proceed to your main agenda, which is your hypothesis testing. Yan, ha? The assessment will be available 4:30 p.m. and beyond. So until 3:30 p.m. tomorrow. Ayun. 4 lang naman siya. Read the instructions, please. The Zoom meeting will be posted under the module Zoom Meetings, kung saan din nakapost yung Zoom meeting ng modules 4 and 5. Sa baba lang niya ilalagay ko yung Zoom recording ng session na ito. For those who want to check or recheck kung ano yung mga na-miss out nila. Okay? Yan. Yun lang naman ang aking important announcements. Any questions? Clarifications? Kaya ba? Kaya yan. Kailangan lang isaulo yung mga concepts. Going once, going twice. Okay? So if wala ng questions, maraming salamat sa pag-join ng Zoom meeting. So bukas, hopefully hindi bumagyo. Tayo'y makapag-Zoom meeting ulit. If in case na hindi kaya ng connection natin, connection ko, I will just record the hypothesis testing. Pero I hope hindi. Okay? So thank you for joining the Zoom. And I hope na okay kayong lahat dyan. Yan. Kamsahamnida. Thank you so much, guys. Again, for those who were late, please type in your complete name on our chat box, please. You are most welcome. Thank you also. Bye, guys.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Bye, ma'am. Have a nice
Bye,
day.
ma'am.
Have a nice day.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye. Sige. I will end the meeting ha in 3, 2,